So, welcome
So,
to our ThinkTech show. This is the third episode. So, our guest is Vaishvik, who is currently in Motive Studio and previously worked at Electronic Arts and Ubisoft. So, he has a brilliant experience in game development industry. So, Vaishvik, can you tell our listeners how did you become interested in game development and what motivated you to pursue this career?
So, first of all, hi. It's been a while since I talked to
Hi,
the
hi.
students. I previously I was at the PDPU and I talked to a lot of people there. Um, Being interested in gaming industry, it's like it always comes from your childhood because you like playing games, right? Like you get
Yeah, yeah.
introduced to certain games and then you play them and then you start thinking, okay, how they are made. Maybe there is something that I can do. But it doesn't happen right away. It's just that you play and then you get interested and you are playing with friends and you like that idea of playing. And towards I went towards finishing the school. I started developing interest into like thinking, okay, how a game could be
Hmm.
made, right? And
Hmm.
then by the time I joined my college, I was already like thinking that okay, probably I should aim for EA as a company that I would want to join without having any idea how I would be able to join. So on the first day of my orientation in Nirma, I literally asked that
Okay.
like whether EA comes for placement or not. I don't think so.
So you are
But
already motivated toward that area before going to
yeah,
BTech.
it was an interest. I didn't know at all like what I would have to do, but I knew that okay, eventually I would know in some way that it would happen. But coming from a background in a way that I was not exposed to certain environment where I could like get that information, I thought that okay, what happens if I just ask this on an orientation day, which I did. And
True,
the
true.
irony was that the campus placement officer did not know what EA was. So like
okay.
okay, that's the start. So this is where we have to go from. So but internet helps always. So that's how we started, right? Like we like at least from the millennial era, like it's been a boon that we have access to internet and we can literally search for anything, and that's what helped me in terms of like gaming interest. There were certain projects that I did just to have fun of it. Like I used to play Need for Speed, which one is Most Wanted, a lot.
Oh,
And in my
actually,
second year,
actually, we
All
we
kids'
were
favorite
going to
game.
ask a question about that. Like Need for Speed Most Wanted is one of my favorite games. I have played two times. I could say even the
wonder.
Charul, same for the
Yeah,
Charul, if I'm not
basically,
wrong,
it's
right?
just like schedule like just come to home at 6 p.m. and
After
start
that,
our
2 hours
PC
with
and
friends.
open. Yeah, exactly.
So
Exactly, yeah.
so this is our motivational game for any game development guy. So how did you
It needs to
convert
think
your
it.
passion for this game, and when you actually get to work on a game development of one of these series of NFS, so how
Mhm.
did you feel during that period?
When I actually started working on NFS, I was pretty much excited because that's what I wanted to do. Like being on the franchise that I have loved for decades, that was a pretty exhilarating experience in a way that
Hmm.
like you get to be a part of something that you used to enjoy and you continue to enjoy. Just like I have played every NFS that has come out since Most Wanted, since Underground 2 actually, and
Oh,
looking at it in a way that okay, I am making something that is something that myself would play later. That was something amazing. And also I worked on a pretty what can I say, like pretty important part of the game, which is the car customization part. So the
Okay.
whole
oh,
I worked on the pipeline that basically allows you to change all the parts and colors and whatnot. Like you can apply anything to any car, and allowing the designers and artists and all the people involved in making that feature happen, that whole user experience for the developers, getting it out and seeing people make on top of what you're making and then releasing it to
Hmm.
people and then getting the reaction from the people, that's just there is nothing
I could
like
say
it.
you worked on one of the most favorite thing of the players, like customization
yeah,
of the car.
exactly.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, so coming back to what I was saying before, right? Like NFS Most Wanted, when I was on third year of my BTech, I with along with my another my friend basically, we what we call QR code now. Back then,
Hmm.
it
Mhm.
didn't exist. So what we did was that we had like black and white checkered board kind of a thing, like a chessboard, but like a three cross three glyph, and we attached on a glove on each of our fingers. And what we could do is we just use computer vision for it, and what we would do
Oh,
is based on
wow.
these two hands, we would just handle the steering of a car and the whole controller. So
Wow.
you could just
Innovative idea.
you could just play it like this, and if you are pressing the thumb, it would accelerate, or it
Oh,
would play.
nice.
And based on your like orientation of your clips and all, it would actually like steer. So that's where we started feeling like, okay, this is getting interesting. I should be like exploring this further. And that's when I started reading more about game development and game engines, what they are. And there are like specific books that I read, and then there were there are certain subjects in the semester where we had to go by our own subject, and that's where I chose that, like, okay, I just want to see how this works, and then it helped me a lot. And eventually, I just applied by myself for the offline campus, and they liked some of my projects that I worked on, and it was fine for the Ubisoft.
It is a nice
Uh,
motivation that sets you apart from
exactly.
others, isn't it, Sarul?
Yeah. Exactly. So, like as you say, like you are just go for a off campus kind of stuff. So for the off campus, in a off campus applying, we need certain portfolio. So as a student, what things you take care?
So when you apply at a certain company, you have to understand what they are working on in a way, not in a way that what exact things they're working on. It's just the global audience that they are catering to and what kind of like what product they are working on, right? So it's like
Hmm.
if tomorrow I'm applying at Adobe, you need to know like what kind of products do they have, right? Is it like Photoshop or is it like Reader? So you can start sensing their expectation of what they would want from someone who is fresh. So in that way, you need to start figuring out first of all whether certain company is a product company or a service-based company, because that drastically changes the way you apply for
True,
companies.
true, true.
Because when you apply at a product company, they have certain expectation in a way that if you are applying at a suppose you are working suppose you are applying for a service-based company who is like completely catering to Web3 clients, your C++
Hmm.
experience doesn't matter at all, right? So it's like knowing the company you're applying for makes a lot of difference, because you will have to always make different resumes based on where you are applying. Because you will have, suppose you have like 10 different projects based on the company you are applying at. You have to prioritize certain projects over others depending on what company you are applying at. So it's like if you are applying at Adobe, showing your computer vision projects first is the right thing to do, right?
True.
Just I'm just saying as a
Hmm.
hypothetical example, right? So depending on what team you're applying at and what kind of expectation they have, you have to always show different prioritized projects for all of your resumes. So creating different resumes for different companies is the most important thing, I would say.
And specifically, if I am telling about things to consider for the applying in EA kind of stuff, EA, Ubisoft.
So for EA, Ubisoft, it's they are specifically gaming specific companies, and they usually seek out for people who are passionate in in this industry. So definitely having gaming specific projects is a plus. It's not always a must have, but if you have it, it will help you for sure. Because when you work on a certain kind of game project, even if you work on it for like 2 3 months, it gives you such an exposure that usually when we even ask certain very easy questions in an interview, people don't know just because they are just not used to it. That's it. It's not like when we take an interview, it's just going to be too hard. It's just that the relatability of it is not there. So if even if you just work on like one gaming project which lasts for 2 3 months, you will know enough things that you can relate to when we even ask questions. Sometimes even if you just ask questions, understanding a question is important, right? First you understand a certain question and then you reply to something if you know it. But if you have never worked on a certain kind of project, then you will never know what a game loop is, or what a collider is, something like that, right? I'm just using some words. Some people will know, some people will not, which is completely fine because it completely depends on your interest in this industry. So if you are interested in the industry, you have to know certain that you just need to spend some time. Not we are not even asking like you need to spend like a year worth of projects. You don't need to do that. It's just that having some familiarity is a must have. You don't need to spend like a whole year on something. It's just that as long as you work on a small project, it's fine. And nowadays, like YouTube has so many videos that even if you like spend 2 days over a weekend, it's fine. It will give you enough idea whether you want to pursue this career or not, even in like partial form, right? So to get an idea whether you would want to continue working on for towards this industry, once you watch certain kind of dev videos, it should be fine. So like that's where you should start from,
So,
basically.
Vaishvik, you have been into this gaming industry, and you were talking about the people should have interest from the beginning. So, I would like to ask a question like, what approaches to brainstorm and generate creative ideas for the games you usually apply in your day-to-day life, and that have drastically or say slightly changed the gaming industry or the gaming development?
The kind of problems that you get every day is going to be different depending on which team you are on. So if you are a
Hmm.
software engineer, most of the times you are going to solve the problems that most software engineers get in an algorithmic way, right? And mostly it's going to be following a certain gameplay or a certain design or a certain vision of a director that okay, we want to do something. You Hey, we want to make the biggest city the gaming industry has ever seen.
Hmm.
Suppose a
Yeah,
creator
yeah.
director says this to us, right? Then the question becomes, okay, how big do we want this? How
Hmm.
much do we want to support? What is the scale of this world that we need to start handling in a way that, okay, if we think about it streaming, like how can we stream this world? So like then we start breaking down this problem into sub problems, and then you go fix not fix but solve those problems in a way that okay, we want to achieve this. We might not be able to achieve it 100%, but let's see where we can get. So it
True.
depends on the context of the design and the vision of the art, and how do we want to have the player experience for the game. So that's where we usually go for. But if you completely talk about the granular, like a granular day-to-day event, it's going to be very
Hmm.
software specific. It's going to be like the kind of problems you solve, not always like the ones we see as a lead code problem, because no one solves lead code problems all the way in any jobs. It's just that that's everywhere. But even after that, there's going to be you'll always have challenging problems to solve all the time. So depending on what kind of part of the wheel you are working on, you will
Hmm.
have the share of it.
So there is a like we say a rule or kind of thing that every big companies obviously ask the questions from lead code like what are your skills, then you have to show I have done some lead code or
Mhm.
code
Yes.
shape. So when you get to EA and Ubisoft,
Mhm.
so did you also have to showcase your skill like this?
Back then, lead code didn't exist. But having said that, when I took interview for E, I did we did
Hmm.
have live coding. So live coding is like, think of live coding as something that live coding is kind of a test, is just to check that whether you code on a daily basis or not. That's it.
True.
Because if you code on a daily basis, there are two parts of a. So if you think about any lead code problem, there are two parts of it, right? First is finding a solution on an algorithmic way. Language
Hmm.
doesn't matter. After that, you start code. That's where like your syntactical knowledge matters, right? So there are two parts of any live coding problem. First is your problem solving skills, and second is translating your problem solving skills into something that you would actually do every day, right? So we assume that once you have certain kind of experience, you are very comfortable with the second part of the thing, which is like coding something.
Hmm.
So coding something should not be a problem when you ask a certain question. Now, every interviewer in every company, every good company, knows that no one can solve hard problems in 15 or 20 minutes. So no one expects that. If they expect that, they will know that, okay, even if they show that they are expecting it, as long as you reach to a certain point, they will be fine with it. So it's like you don't have to think of it like 0 or 100. You just need to show your thinking process, and that's fine.
And
Problem solving
your
also.
creativity skill, if I am not wrong.
Yes.
So when
So,
people say I have solved 500 problems on lead code, it doesn't mean anything. It's just that you just need to be aware of certain kind of, not even aware. It's just that you need to practice your problem solving skills rather than practice the problems. There is a difference, right?
hmm,
If you keep
true.
practicing graph problems, that doesn't mean that you are going to get better at solving graph problems. You are just getting better at looking at how graph looks like. That's it.
Mm,
Like focusing on your problem solving methods is better than, like, it's more important than focusing on just the problems. Certain people might just go through 50 different lead code problems of all of different types versus someone practicing for 1,000 lead code problems. Both might end up having the same impact depending on how you worked on those solutions, right?
mm-hmm.
So grinding lead code doesn't get you anywhere.
So
Okay.
That's
just
that's
approach is a matter.
Approaches matter, obvious.
exactly, the approach matters. So most of the companies, they always look for this, like how you are approaching the problem. So
Hmm.
even if you don't get to a solution, it might be fine depending on how you approach the problem. When I took interviews at EA, I always had one small live coding questions,
Hmm.
actually two, depending on how the candidate is approaching the problem. I would sometimes change the next question. It always depends on the person that you are actually interviewing and what you expect from them. So depending on your skills and your experience on previous companies, it matters a lot to expect that, okay, if you're like 10 years of experience, I would expect that yes, you have certain kind of coding comfortability. So it's like you should not be hesitating to code when you have 10 years of experience. It does matter how regularly you are coding in some form. It doesn't need to be like lead code. It's just that if you have experience, if you are working on a
Hmm.
certain company, I'm assuming that you are coding enough that this is not a problem for you. The problem for you during the interview is just to get to the part where you need to find the solution for a given problem.
As you said, you also have taken some interviews. Am I
Mhm.
correct? So चारों वैश्विक से थोड़ा बना के रखना पड़ेगा.
Oh, correct. Yeah,
So I'm currently
absolutely.
at EA only, by the way. It's a motive studio is
Hmm.
within EA only in Montreal.
Okay. So it is
Okay.
a sub company or a acquired company or it is a sub
So
branch.
most gaming companies have, so like certain subsidiaries called studios. So
Okay.
all studios, like, so Motive Studio is one of the studios of EA. So
Okay. Okay.
recently the Motive Studio released Dead Space, which is a game of EA.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
So
Hmm.
similarly, EA India has one studio which is in Hyderabad.
And
This
you are
is
the part of that team. Are
yes,
you?
I am a part. Currently, I'm a part of Iron Man team. We announced the game last year,
Okay.
Oh,
so we are working on a
Congrats
single
for that.
player.
yeah.
We haven't released yet, but okay.
But actually, I'm a big Tony Stark fan.
Even I am.
Exactly.
Even
Everyone
I
is.
Yeah.
The Marvel's first, I guess, creation is Iron Man, and it is
Iron
a
Man,
love
yeah.
of every 90s kids.
am.
Could you tell us brief about your work at Motive Studio, what you do on regular basis and how you do?
Currently, as I said just now, like I'm working on an Iron Man game which is just announced. It's not like it's complete yet. It's not complete yet. It's far away from release so far.
Hmm.
So my current work is making a lot of my co-workers' life easy in a way that we can build the world that we want to, where Tony Stark lives, right? So there are certain places that we want to generate, that we want to build, and we want to build it very fast, right? So when you are building something big very fast, you cannot do it manually. You need to like automate a lot of creation problems.
True, true.
So it's like it's it's a pipeline that creates worlds automatically, procedurally.
Okay.
So like although algorithmically you allow the designers to place certain elements without having to like modify them by themselves. So it's like if you are creating a building, if if a designer says, I don't want to create one building, I want to create 1,000 buildings, and out of
Mhm.
those 1,000 buildings, I want to distribute the probability of certain buildings being of like 200 levels, certain buildings at 20 levels, with some of these buildings having 10 windows, some of these buildings having 5 windows, allowing them to design the way they want. There needs to be a system that lies underneath in the background that allows them to make this and allow them to tweak anything. So if even if you generate like 1,000 buildings, eventually they would say, okay, out of these 1,000 buildings, I want to like pick these 5 buildings and change their properties. So how would you allow that? And while you work on that, it's not just going to be one designer who works on the whole world together, right? There will be like hundreds of developers who would work on the same area, same region, change different things. How would you allow that to happen where whoever makes the changes, the other people also understand that okay, there is a repercussion of you doing something and you are making something that has a substantial effect. So I'm working on that pipeline, which is basically a procedural world building pipeline.
Okay, so as you said, you do lot of stuffs there. So I would like to ask you, game development and working in a company and also playing a game. There is a lot of coordination required between the teams. So how do you ensure effective communication and collaboration to bring a game into a life?
Being vocal is the most important thing when you have multiple types of stakeholders, because when you work with different types of different types of the people who come from different background, basically, right? Engineers come
Hmm.
from a very different background.
Yeah.
They have studied something in a different way,
Yeah,
whereas artists, they are from completely different background. They are so creative,
true,
right?
true.
Designers also, they are designers are like usually in a way that they have vision of doing something, like they are kind of like builders who want to architect something, right? And there are certain people who are so close to working on systems, they would think about like, okay, I see this thing happening, but underlying how something will work, that how part matters to them so much. So when you work with multiple stakeholders, you need to understand like where they are coming from and where they want to go, and depending on their psychology, you have to work with them in that way. Because if as a software engineer, if tomorrow I'm talking to an artist, I cannot talk about any kind of math that I'm using to make their life easier, because
True, true.
first of all, they don't care. Even if they want to, they wouldn't care,
Hmm.
because at the end of the day, what they would expect is results. If they expect a circle, they just expect a circle. If there is a problem in a circle, if there is a deviation in a circle, they would just say, I cannot use this. That's it. They would not care there is a bug in certain kind of function that I wrote for drawing the circle, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
So depending on the kind of background that you have, you need to talk to them in a way that you meet their requirements, or at least you meet the middle ground. If certain there are going to be certain times where you are not going to agree with them. Maneuvering in a way that you both come to a middle ground or you both find a solution together is very important. Because when you think of any kind of problem that you're solving together, there are like there are two parts of it. First is a technical part, which is where the game is being made. There is certain aspects of it, and there is a people part, right? So as you just said, like how do you make the creative decisions and all? Most creative decisions are on the people side. Getting better at the communication is the most important thing, even more than your technical aspect after one point.
Hmm.
So more
True.
you practice that, more it's important. Like the moment you get into an internship, it's vital that you talk to as many people as possible, because then only you would know more people, and
Right.
then you will start understanding what motivates them, what makes them good at what they are doing.
Hmm. As
And
it
only
is says, communication is the key.
Yeah.
exactly. So
Exactly.
only when you know someone, then you will know their motivations, and then you will be able to
Yeah, yeah.
work with them, right? So yeah,
True,
it
true.
depends a lot on like how you talk to people and how you converse with them to find a solution that you're looking for.
Like if we talk about a communication skill, so in your earlier stage of career or your in your student life, have you tackled that thing and now you are good at communications? So any tips you want to share?
I didn't take part in the extracurricular activities like you are doing right now. Like I didn't do that. But I think it's just a social thing that even if you are an introvert, it's just that sometimes you need to practice in a way that you just talk to people on a certain thing. Maybe if you are an introvert, I think then the only thing, like usually you don't talk to people because you don't have certain things in your mind to talk about. Maybe you can just pick a topic to just take it from there and you can discuss that, right? Like there are always going to be certain people that you are interested by in terms of a specific thing. Like suppose you see a classmate who is always working on a blockchain project, right? Now if you don't know anything about it, and if you are even tiny bit interested, what's stopping you to just ask them, hey, what are you working on? Just give me 5 minutes and just spend some those 5 minutes telling me like how you are doing something, right? It's like breaking that barrier of not communicating when you could just do it in a very simple way. It's like a lot of times we are just nervous of finding that someone doesn't want to speak to us more than finding our own like solution to the curiosity, right? So like there is the balance of it that we need to find, that how can we push through our own nervousness
Yeah.
and get that like
True.
get that specific solution
To
out of
speak.
it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Making most of it.
Basically, we all have something to say, but we are just looking for our favorable topic to
Hmm.
speak up.
Exactly. So it's like have you read that book Atomic Habits? the
No,
concept
I
of
have not.
the concept of it is very simple, right? If you want to start, like if suppose you want to make a habit of running every day, what this book says is, on the very first day, don't go to run, just wear the shoes. That's it.
Okay,
So it's like just
Okay.
do
nice.
that part and just keep
Yeah.
doing that part, and then eventually you will start doing something else. You will start maybe go out and just stand there, and then next time you can just start walking. Maybe you go to that
Hmm.
phase. Point being, like, do the least amount of thing that is like, don't go from 0 to 100. You can do that, but if you do that, you will always expect 100 from yourself, right?
Yeah.
So
True, true.
expecting 100 from yourself is the biggest like blocker for us to do anything in our life. And this applies to me as well. Like there are also certain things of my life right now that I'm expecting 100 from myself, and then I'm like, no, I'm not reaching there yet. So even to
True.
myself, I would say the same thing. It's like just start doing it. See, if someone is conversing, you can just like stand there and listen to them. Maybe at one point
Hmm.
they will just loop you in a conversation.
The major thing is
Yes.
making connection and talking to connecting thoughts. That is the most important thing.
In a game development, there is a one major task optimization. So,
Mhm.
what kind of optimizing problem you are facing while making some games or game engines?
Optimization is a very, it's ocean basically, because every design, every architectural design is going to be a bottleneck in some way. So
Hmm.
whenever you are designing something, you are going to choose a certain bottlenecks just by yourself. Like suppose we come back to the previous point, which was like a designer says, I want to make the biggest world possible. Now the biggest problem for that world would be the memory, because how can you
Yep.
fit the memory of that much of a bigger world, right? So that's where the optimization starts coming into the picture. So it's like optimization is always in the context of the experience that you want to give to the users. So it's like, let me show in let me compare two different games. Do you know Last of Us?
Ah, yeah, yeah.
Last of Us. Yep. Yes. Exactly.
I.
So Last of Us is a very single player, like it's a single player
Hmm.
linear game. You
Hmm.
go from one place to another place. It like that's the only way the game expects you
Yep.
to go, right? And
Hmm.
there are open world games, right? Open world games which are like you can go anywhere, do anything, like Horizon Zero Dawn or Witcher,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
like where you can just do anything anywhere, you can go anywhere. The game doesn't expect you to always be at this time and this place, right? The kind of optimizations that you do for these two games is completely different, because
Okay.
one game is just curating your experience so in a so closed environment that they always know that this, if you are at this place, these are the things that we need to show off the best. It's like
Hmm.
if you go indoor within Last of Us, they are going to make sure that that room is the most detailed room ever, in a way that like you would
Yeah,
be
yeah.
able to interact with that. you cannot expect the same thing from an open world game, because
Yeah,
the
yeah.
open world game
Exactly.
cannot stream that much data anytime whenever you
Mm.
are going. Your
But
problem completely differs in terms of that
mm.
context.
Yeah, but there are, I guess, some optimizations like we have seen GTA 5, but
Mhm.
where GTA 4 we compared, there are character issues. Like when you go through the car, it just passes away. Like you have
Yeah.
seen Cyberpunk, the latest release. There are
Mhm.
some technical issues. Like these are open games, but still player interaction is not sometimes matched. There they are lacking some type of optimization. So
Yeah.
can you tell as a developer how to tackle these situations, and if you have made some game and having the similar issues, then how you solve this?
For games like Cyberpunk, I think it's more of the way these optimizations happened. I think it wasn't the developer problem; it was just a business decision problem. The Cyberpunk was basically made like the biggest problem I see for Cyberpunk, because I was also expecting so much from the game. I think the biggest problem was that the team was divided between optimizing for previous generation of console and the new generation of console. So
Mm,
that's why, as I say, the context of delivering your game matters a lot. Suppose I'm an engineer, and if I am told that I have to make sure that my game runs on a 4 GB memory and 14 GB memory, I'm just using those as as
Yeah.
a hypothetical values. I would always think about the 4 GB first, because that's where my bottleneck lies, right? So if I always think about it in that way, my eventually I'm going to hit a certain point where I cannot do that as well, and that will also bring my experience down for the other one, which is a better one as well. So it was more of a business part of the problem for Cyberpunk. I feel like that they tried to support PS4 and X1, where the game was supposed to be made for the new generation of consoles. So
PS5
that's
like
why
that.
if you go back and
Yes.
play Cyberpunk on PS5 or any of the new generation PCs, you will see that the game is much better now, because they could focus
Mm,
just on optimization. So context matters a lot in terms of what you are optimizing, but like for Cyberpunk, it was mainly the streaming problem, and
okay.
PS4 and X1 did not have SSDs, so that was a big problem. So that's why you would always see, like, first of all, like, if you go near a character, it would show some very hazy, very
Yeah,
blurry
yeah, yeah.
face, then it would start getting
Exactly.
better. Like, it's a streaming problem basically, because it's like it's loading the smallest size of your material first, and
Mm,
then it's like gradually loading other stuff and at a better granularity. So the details, you cannot just stream everything into the finest detail all the time, so you need to always, depending on your hardware, you need to manage streaming that portion. So they did what they could from what I see, but the game was just not meant to be for the previous generation.
So, just you mentioned about the older generation and newer generation hardware kind of stuff. So, with the hardware upgradation, there is some challenges you are facing into a technical or on a you can say to upgrade yourself. So, have you stay updated with the technology in terms of gaming or in terms of game development?
I would say yes, only if you work on the hardware layer, I mean the drivers layer, or the way you expect on specifically optimizing for all the hardwares, then only I would say that you need to be aware, because for my work, I don't need to be aware of it all the time. That doesn't mean that I wouldn't need to know. Eventually when I want to know, I will get to it. But I don't need to know the granularity of how IO works on a PS5 all the time, I mean. So
mm-hmm.
depending on when you have to work on a certain part that requires hardware information, then sure, you need to do it. But otherwise, like, mainly because the we are currently working on, suppose we are currently working on Unreal Engine. Now Unreal Engine already takes care of such things for you in a way that, okay, it knows how the hardware works. It's just that there are going to be certain parts where you have to align your data flow, so the in a way that engine expects you to be. That's it, and that's where you work on that layer. So it becomes like a hardware abstraction layer on top of which you usually work on, unless you are
Okay.
changing the hardware abstraction layer itself. Then you need to know the hardware more. So it's up to
Okay.
you. If you are interested in such things,
Mm-hmm.
you can go for such things. but you don't always need to do that.
Okay.
Oh,
So, Vaishvik, gaming industry is always an emerging industry, and daily new user experiences also are coming into the picture. So, what emerging trends do you see on the horizon that could shape the future of gaming development and player experience also?
yeah, that's a
Generative
nice question.
generative AI.
Kudos to this.
Well,
Oh well,
generative AI is the first thing it's going to change
one
the way
line
we work.
answer.
It's going to change the way we work for sure. But in terms of like
Hmm.
user experience, the way people are playing more is it's different. Like there are generational gaps with the kind of players that we have. Like if you think about Gen Z is more interested in work in playing together.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So there are certain
multiplayers.
kind of like key aspects of different types of audience. So you will start seeing such trends where people are more into co-op games, or maybe people are more into uh, constructive multiplayer games rather than just killing off each other all the time, right? So it's like that's also a difference. And as like as a millennial, as I am getting older, I am starting to find like bigger games don't excite me anymore. Bigger, by bigger I mean longer games that takes
Hmm.
like
Okay.
100 hours to complete. So it's like even for a current audience also I see a trend changing basically in a way that
Hmm.
games also need to change to cater to such audiences. So I think generative AI as a medium to make this happen is going to help people get there, but it's getting so widespread that previously it used to be like big blockbuster games and they would always work. I don't see that happening going forward. Like if an like other than like apart from certain exceptions, companies can no more think that okay we'll just make a big budget game and it will work. They cannot just think like that because the audiences have choice,
Yeah.
and the choice brings them to a certain kind of expectations for an experience that they are seeking with or
Hmm.
without their friends, and that changes the dynamics.
Exactly. The audience choices has very much changes as we see in 10 years of generations gap
Yep.
because I personally also like to play the little bit longer games as you might also. But
Yep.
today's generation kids are like, no, we want a game that can be completed in 2 or 3 days. That is the
Yep.
most
Like
of their patience level.
actually, we are saying like BGM or PUBG kind of stuff. So
Hmm.
every 30 minutes we have start from a zero. So
Right.
this is just a 30 minute of game. Either
That's a
you
bite size
win a
experience.
chicken dinner or this is not.
Yep.
Exactly.
Games
Yeah.
like PUBG, they are like
So
just social experiences, right? You are just playing with your games. It doesn't matter what happens in your session. What matters
yeah.
is you are doing it with your friends. Like the thing that the experience that the game is giving you is not the shooting or winning experience. It's more of like playing with your friends experience. Unless you are playing
Mhm.
competitively, obviously.
Yeah.
One of
Exactly.
the
And
movie Ryan Reynolds. He's a free guy. His movie name is Free Guy. So
Free
he
Guy is
played.
amazing.
Have you seen that?
NPC.
Oh.
He
NPC.
played an
He's an NPC.
NPC and how it learns and evolves itself
Yes.
with AI. It is a
Yep.
pretty amazing thing,
Yep.
isn't it?
Saw that movie.
Exactly.
So, creating NPCs like that. So, have you ever imagined or you tried?
I haven't tried it, of course. Like it's something that a lot of people are talking about, like using generative AI to make something like self-aware. Is just
Hmm.
that if you make something self-aware, then there it will go in two ways. First is maybe the game will be always
Yeah, yeah.
connected to the internet. That's one way. The second way would be your game size will like increase in a way that you keep that caches the data with your game data, which kind of might be risky for the company, for any company to share, because that then it's a security issue for certain like intellectual property. So I don't
Hmm.
see it happening for localized version of generative AI for anyone, but assume that if any game going forward has a generative AI in a way that you can just converse with any NPC and let them think by themselves, they will be probably connected.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
true, I guess.
So, Vaishvik, like in just last to last question, you are telling about a player's feedback, right?
Mhm.
So, I I want to just ask one thing on that. Uh, from the player feedback, what are the positive changes or positive improvement as a developer you can done into game engines?
So
Hmm.
usually all game teams have a communication team, the PR team, and usually they are the ones who bring up the most asked requests or most pain points, right? In a way that they figure out, okay, this is what the community is asking for, or these are the things that we need to improve on, or maybe some people had like some bunch of people had a certain problem that we need to solve. So there is always someone or at least a team of them who is always coming back to us with the feedback from the players. So like it especially for the games that are already live and you need to make them as a live service project. So like think about as PUBG or Fortnite. I'm sure they'll have a separate team that will keep coming back to their developers to say that okay, these are the problems that we currently have. We have to solve them in a prioritized order, and the team will keep doing it parallelly with what they are actually working on for the future from future features, right? So
Okay,
exactly. So it's like you need to always like the developers always balance between what needs to happen for the future versus what they need to maintain right now. So depending on the severity and the priority of certain current problems, they will prioritize. But
Yeah,
assume
yeah.
that all companies, at least all big companies, have certain parts who are always looking at the community feedback.
Hmm,
okay.
true. And it is where
Uh,
community feedback is very helpful to the companies, as we have seen.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So, like, can you done something kind of this stuff like from the player feedback you improve your feature?
Is there any feature that lags and using feedback method you get feedback from the users or the players
Okay.
and then you
In the past.
improve it? Such
Yeah,
is
exactly.
anything specific do you like to share with our audience?
So it was one of these things only, like the need for speed customization thing. We knew that the experience of customization needs to be enhanced because
Hmm.
the NFS that I worked on that is on mobile, that's not on console, and on console
Yeah, yeah.
we were used to customize so much, right? And
Hmm.
we knew that in a way that okay, on mobile we need to make this better. We made the game when we made the game depending on the hardware we had back in 2014, but
Yeah.
in 2018 2019 we had evolved hardware, so we could afford some more complexity of it. So that's where we decided that okay, community wants more customizations, let's give them more customization, and how can we achieve it? So you spend some time figuring it out and going onto the whiteboard and just like brainstorming how can you make this happen and then changing
Back
the
to
right
basics.
part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. That too, whiteboard is always a basic.
Yeah, yeah, true.
Yeah.
Okay, so Vaishvik, could you highlight one or two projects that you particularly proud of? That these projects are stand out to you.
So one is definitely Need for Speed, but I think I talked about it enough during this call. But
Hmm.
the second one is like which is not too talked about, but it is one of the projects that will always be close to my heart, which is Grow Up. So Grow Up was
Okay.
a console game that I was a part of the team that ported the game from PC to PS4, and we had so many challenges in that game that gave me the kind of experience that still helps me every day.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it was like
So,
it was a very physics specific, like physics heavy game with a lot of problems in a way that like in a way
true,
that
true.
we had to optimize the game a lot basically.
Yeah,
And
there are lots of physics involved also. So, that is a curiosity question. How do you manage that physics in the games?
Well, physics is a whole different subsystem, so it's like a whole different thing. You like
Yeah.
assume that every part of the game you think about, it's a
Hmm.
completely separate topic that people can just be an expert on. So
Hmm.
when you think about like game developers, they like the specialization of game developers is per subsystem. You can think about it like that. So like gameplay engineers can be different from engines, and the engine programmers can also be different. Like currently, I can be called a procedural programmer only, whereas someone else completely just works on rendering. There are graphics programmers. There are people just working on physics. Those are physics programmers. Networking programmers are completely different. So like everyone is specialized into these subparts of the engine, and even though we have some idea of how certain things will work, we can never be an expert on those things.
True, true, true.
Yeah,
Yeah. So like as you have mentioned, there are multiple experts coming together and
exactly.
make one stuff possible.
Yep.
So while we are talking about a multiple experts are coming together and make stuff, so there are some different kind of challenge you faced. So can you please highlight on that problems or some challenge?
You mean to say like when people from different specialization come together, there are going to be some kind of conflicts?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's very similar to what we talked about before, which is like having multiple types of stakeholders. So understanding what where they are coming from and what their psychology is very important to understand, and where they want to go. That also matters a lot. So it's like knowing the current state of the problem and their solution and their mindset behind the solution matters. Like if you are solving something, why you are solving something, first of all, why you are solving something, and second is how you are solving something, is very important to know from anyone when you're conversing towards a certain goal. So whenever you talk to a certain specialist which is not your which is not your area,
Hmm.
and it applies to them as well, that it's not their area to know my things, it's very important to show both our sides that okay, this is the situation, why I want to change certain situation and how I am changing something. So convincing them into these both parts is very important, and then you can go forward together.
Yeah, that is
Yeah.
the most important part.
Yeah.
Also, I'd like to ask Vaishvik, how do you strike a balance between incorporating your creative vision into a game while also considering your technical limitations and market trends?
That's always a thing that everyone tries to balance, but I don't think anyone balances that.
So
It
that is the question. How do you
that
balance that?
only works if you are like so much into
Hmm.
love of gaming, and
Mhm.
like if you are willing to spend extra time just working on your own stuff as a creative thing. So it's like I know a
Hmm.
few people who are separately working on their own projects just because of fun of it. No, like no commercial motive. It's just that they just want to create something that they want to create as an experience, and that's it. That's where they feed from their creative hunger, versus the technical part of it, the challenging part of the everyday job they already get. So you cannot expect a day-to-day job to give you everything every day. So eventually you will find other ways to just get the you'll find another ways to just do something by yourself to feed yourself of what is lacking. So suppose if you are working at a company that doesn't give that where you don't have enough technical problems, maybe just doing a lead code problem every day might actually give you that satisfaction because you are solving
Hmm.
something maybe like that. So finding that hunger, finding that lack of area which your current job is not giving you, and doing it by yourself separately is the way to go, as long as you want it.
True,
Yeah.
true.
So with
So,
this, Vaishvik, we have one audience here, Mira,
Okay,
and she want to ask some question to you. So it's
sure.
the audience section of
Sure.
podcast. Yeah, Mira. Yeah.
Hi,
Hi,
yeah,
Mira.
am
Mira,
I
you can
audible?
go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Am
yeah,
I
you're
audible?
completely audible. Go ahead
Okay.
with your
Hi,
question.
Vaishvik. I'm
Hi.
Meera. I'm currently in my second year. I'm pursuing BTech at PDPU. I had a couple of questions. Firstly, for students who are just starting out but are very much interested in gaming development, but they don't know where to, begin. What sources would you recommend, and for the theory, and also for practical knowledge, for suppose interviews, internships, etc. What projects would you say are the most beneficial, or the kind of necessities that students should generally focus on?
Right. I would say don't go for theory. Just start with practical because that's how you learn theory, any theory, right? Uh, YouTube is the best place to start from. Go ask the question that you want to. Maybe someone says that okay, I want to make a Fortnite. How would you make Fortnite? Just ask on YouTube. It will give you something like okay, multiplayer shooter, but at least that's where you start from, right? Ask the question, exact question of what you want to make on YouTube, and then you can find the relatable content and start from there. For game developer, for game development specifically, the easiest way to start is Unity. Unity is a game engine which is already available for free to start with, so you can start using that. If you want to go a bit deeper, you can try with Unreal Engine. I wouldn't recommend doing it from the start, but definitely it's the way to go if you want to become an expert. So depending on what platform you want to stay at as well, like if you want to keep if you want to make mobile games, like Unity is kind of like a de facto engine to work on. If you want to make good PC games, performant PC games, console games, Unreal Engine is kind of better because of the language choices they have. But definitely YouTube is the way to go, and just start making a game. Choose a game, start making, and you will start seeing the problems, and those problems will become your sub problems that you find, and then solving one after other sub problems will get you a lot more information than reading a book any day.
That's very helpful. And also another question that I had, like in today's world, as you said, like Gen Z really, they choose to multiplayer games. They choose to connect. So gaming nowadays, it's not just a source of entertainment. It's become a place for communities to engage and interact. And in recent years, like with the rise of online gaming, especially security concerns and data privacy issues have arrived often. So how do you tackle that?
Data privacy, I don't think, like, I think that every big company takes care of the, like, takes this very seriously in a way that all your data is private, especially like your chat data. And also you get to choose your own username, you get to choose the way you interact with people. I personally know that uh, EA and other companies, they make sure that the kind of they have the chat filters on in a way that if you use profane languages, it, like, by default it blurs them out or changes the characters by themselves. And in terms of like machine learning also, they try to find out the people who are toxic, and they have banned people as well previously. And there are certain guidelines for mobile platforms where you have to, not just mobile, for any platforms, where you have to follow certain regulatory rules of different regions and countries, where you have to keep the data private, and you allow the users to
Again, repeat.
basically you need to go through the regulatories of different countries and regions. So that is already there, so most big companies will allow you to like erase your own data if you want. So that's also there. So I think that in terms of privacy, most companies are doing what they need to do to keep it private, but there are always going to be some kind of hacks, and also you never can expect to it for them to be completely secure all the time.
That makes sense. All right, that was all from my side. Thank you.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank
okay.
you, Mira.
Thank you, Mira.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess as a beginner, there are a lot of question to other people's also, like how they should start, what books they should refer, and how they can pursue their career in game development. Because previously, it was game development in India is
Hmm.
not that much of booming, but today it is an booming industry, I say.
Yep. Yep,
And
it is. Yeah.
many youngsters are also passionate about the game development. So, can
Yep.
you give quite advice to them?
as I said, start with YouTube, find out, so like watch a few videos, and then you'll see certain content being referred to as like the things to start from. And choosing the kind of game you want to make is the first thing to do. It's like everyone who wants to actually be in a gaming industry will have certain game in mind that they want to like replicate in certain way, right? So starting to make that is the first thing to do, I would say. So don't go for theory, just start looking for, okay, how can I make a shooter game? Just look for that, just look for the result, and then you will figure out, okay, how I can get to that result, and then how you will learn more. And if you are already from the engineering background, you will start understanding certain subsystems in a way that you will get that faster. So being a good software engineer will definitely help you, but you need to flip this in a way that you have to flip this learning experience in a way that you set your result and you follow the process to get to that result rather than studying first and making something.
Yeah,
Yeah,
also, yeah, it is as you said, first go for practical experience rather than
Yeah,
directly bookish. I also support that because, as Charul will also agree, because we believe in practical knowledge is more important than gaining that bookish knowledge.
yep.
Bookish
like
knowledge is also important, but you have the practical skill, then you can survive.
Yeah, for sure.
like
Yeah. Hmm.
same like you said, like me and Kin all the time doing the same. Just we jump into some problem and start coding randomly.
Then we have to look after the theory stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
It will get
Yeah,
you up to some point for sure. It's like at least you will get the
Hmm.
ball rolling, right? So
Exactly.
you
exactly.
definitely have to go through certain theories, but it's just that you don't need to get to that part where you don't understand that you require something, right?
Yeah,
Like
Yeah, yeah.
there are certain books of like this big, and you are just going through all the topics. Sure, they are important in all the different contexts that they
Hmm.
are written in. It's just that unless you encounter such a problem, you will not have the need of learning something specific, and
yeah,
without the need of it, you will never memorize it. You will never
yeah.
remember, right? That's what happens
Yeah,
to me.
yeah.
Like I have read certain books and I just forget it because I never use it unless I know that, okay, there is a certain problem. Like suppose you think about priority queues in lead code. Like priority queues, tell me one practical time that you have used it. I'm not saying it's a bad
True.
data structure, but actually it happened in my life once that I had to use it, and that's where I remembered, okay, I will never forget priority queue in a way that, okay, heap works like this,
Mm,
Hmm.
right?
yeah,
So learning heaps just on books versus actually needing heaps and then learning about it and then using it, it's, it gives you two different experiences.
yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah, is a good takeaway for the listeners.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Completely agree.
So completely agree. Yeah. So like if we looking ahead into some future, then what is the future of gaming engine? There are some exciting developing are currently going on. Could you share with us?
You need to look at the dev diaries of Unreal Engine because some crazy things are happening there in a way that we are not we but Epic Games, the way they are making certain parts of the world, the workflows that they are building to allow us to create bigger worlds and put like very realistically looking humans, realistically looking environments, the lighting, the way rendering is changing. It's amazing to see how it's going to go. Having said that, the expectations are going to grow in the similar way. So it's like anyone who makes big enough of a game is going to have an expectation to something that looks fabulous. So in next 5 years, all the games you will see will look amazing, but that will become the new standard. So now they will have to push again to see, okay, how can we go from here?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So, okay, I have one interesting question. The scope of game development extends beyond the entertainment with applications in like education, training, and even
Mhm.
some of the therapies.
Yep.
So, could you share some instance where you have witnessed game making a positive impact in the society? beyond its creation for gaming only.
Like,
I have.
just extend to this question. Like, we seeing some stuff in, like a second life game, where we
Hmm.
just actually living a world into some into virtual space.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think it gets me back to the game that I worked on, Grow Up. Sorry, not Grow Up, Grow Home,
Hmm.
where people I've seen comments of people on YouTube and other places where they have literally thanked the developers, where they could feel like they were meditating because it was a very relaxing experience without any destruction. It was more of just exploring something around nature. And like there were comments about dads talking that okay, I connected with my children just playing on this game together. So there are certain emotional aspects of it where we do see people coming back to us with their experiences which were beyond just entertainment purposes. There are most games nowadays, most big games nowadays, they allow accessibility options which allow different types of disabled people to work not work to play and enjoy something that they are not used to. So like if you think about color blindness, right?
Hmm.
More the way we see the screens, the way we see the world, it's not the same for everyone. So there are people who see different colors
True.
in different ways. If you look at the last released game of EA, Jedi Survivor, um, they have different settings just to set the right colors for you to decide, okay, this is what I want to see, things like that. Then there are certain player input options that you can choose from in a way that if you suppose you have just one hand, what would you do? There are certain controllers that Microsoft has made that you can just tweak in a way that suits
Hmm.
your purposes.
Yeah, yeah.
So there are certain like because like gaming is not just, I understand that gaming is entertainment for a lot of people, but there are certain people for whom gaming is also a thing that gives them more they are used to,
Yeah,
right?
well, basically, many people I have seen in newses and many reports have come like they have gained their physical skill they developed through the games by playing games like COD, and they get to know the techniques they can use in actual world. Or
Oh yeah,
I can, yeah, or I can say ki what is it is called reflexes. Many people
reflexes.
have developed good
Reflexes,
reflexes by playing games. Even in today's military drones are operated and their training are also made on the games.
That's
So
true.
it
simulations,
is
right?
the one of the future, if I'm
Crazy
not wrong.
stuff.
Your hand-eye coordination definitely becomes better if you play games regularly.
Hmm. And
Yeah.
there, I guess there was a movie, Charul, isn't it, in which the guy was dead in the accident and his memory is completely uploaded to the afterlife game. So he
Yeah, exactly.
used to play there,
I actually
isn't
forgot
it?
the name of movie, but
Yeah.
like
Have you seen that,
I just
Vaishvik?
for
Hello.
Sorry. Yep.
Have you seen that movie, Vaishvik?
No, no, no. I'm I I'm not sure.
So it
okay.
is a like there it was a future like setup in the movie.
Hmm.
So he used to there was a driverless car. So but he somehow hacks the car and used to with remote control he has to drive. And one day he got met an accident and his memory was uploaded to the afterlife. And in the afterlife, it was a company they called, and where they upload the memory and that memory lives with in continuous manner.
Is this a Johnny Depp movie?
No, no, not Johnny Depp. It is someone else, but it
Okay.
is quite
Okay.
similar. But it was
Yeah,
quite
Okay. Got
interesting.
it. Got it.
and
So,
like Kinshuk is said into last questions,
Mhm.
like many people are develop their skill by just playing a games. So
Mhm.
there is a one example of a gamer I follow on YouTube called Scout.
Mhm.
So
hmm,
he, yeah, exactly. He learn a driving a car through just simulations. Like he purchased
Yes.
a Mustang and he didn't know how to drive. So he
hmm,
just play a simulation car game and he learned how
So
to drive.
it's very important to choose certain games for like learning something real time, right?
Hmm.
So it's like simulation, like playing the simulators is very important. Like if you use NFS to play to learn how to drive, it's not going to be the same.
Yep.
You need that, yeah, because the way friction
Yeah.
works on different, like the way simulators work is they actually simulate certain physics depending on the
Hmm.
properties of the terrain on which your car is moving, right? So it differs completely the way that you make NFS or some other game. So like if you are trying to map your gaming abilities to learn something in real world, it's very important to use the right games for that.
Yeah, yeah. As we have seen also, the gaming industry have or games have more power to evoke the emotions in the person, and many times the games creates memorable experiences. So how do you approach incorporating storytelling and emotional engagement into the games you have worked on?
So first of all, there is a separate department of writers and creative designers. Narrative designers, they are set like completely different departments that work on this. It's just like movies, but in a way that movies always know where they need to go from one place to another because it's a linear storytelling, right? They know what happens next. Whereas on narrative side of things, suppose you are suppose you are supposed to follow an NPC from point A to point B.
Hmm.
For a movie, it's going to happen just like that, right? For a game, what happens if you just go backwards, right?
Yeah.
What happens if
Yeah.
you just don't
Okay.
follow that person, right? So you need to think about such scenarios where you want to make sure that the player is catered towards an experience that is towards our favorable goal, like a favorable emotional experience that we want to have from the player. So that's where the most part of the narrative designers come from. It's their responsibility to make sure that the environment is made in such a way that they get to have the intended experience written by the writers and the storytellers, that okay, I want to make sure that there is, like suppose you are in a Last of Us environment and you want to make sure that there is a horrific experience in this certain
Hmm.
room. The narrative designers have to make sure, okay, I need to set a scene where there is a cinematic of certain zombie coming in at me first, and then I have to face 10 different zombies in this direction. And once I go from here, I'll go to the another section where I need to face a bigger one, and there would be another scene cinematic that will follow after this. So like curating that experience becomes a becomes the key part for the narrative team, that they see that okay, it's like a graph of emotions, like
Hmm.
when do when do we want the players to feel okay, they are secure, versus when do we want them to be on their edge of the seat, right? So it's a completely different department that works on this all the time. That's a full-time job, and we don't work on that
Okay.
unless we have feedback.
Okay.
Okay. So Vaishvik, like everyone has a up and down in life. So in your life, in your career, have you ever goes down and have you left and all?
And how did you rise up from that also?
Yeah.
it's it's very subjective in a way, that what you call it in a up and down, it's just that whenever we face challenges, it's more important to know that how to it's the most important part is acknowledging where you are at any point of time, up or down, right? Good or bad. So
Hmm.
acknowledging that part first and accepting where you are is the most important thing, and then you can set the goal of reaching somewhere, career wise or personal, in personal life as well. What you can do is at certain times, what all you can do is set a vision and work on your systems. You cannot define the milestones. You can just say, you can think about like, okay, let me give you an example. Like your vision can be, I want to be the best C++ programmer ever, something like that. It's just a vision. It's not something that's like achieve. It's not something that's measurable, right? It's just a vision. But what you can do is you can practice every day, right?
Yeah.
So you know your vision and you know your
Yeah, yeah.
system. You don't need to set the milestones that
Hmm.
within 6 months I want to solve 1,000 lead code problems. No, that's not what you want to do. You just want to become the best C++ programmer. You want to just be better than what you were previously, right? So that's your system.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
working on the system towards your goal is just that's the only thing you can do when you are at your lowest or when you want to become better than where you are. That's it. Like
Yeah.
Hmm.
rather
Uh,
than focusing on small milestones to achieve, I think this is the way I work, like to make sure that I don't end up expecting from myself too much every day. It's just
yeah.
better to just focus on the thing that you can do. Knowing what you can
Hmm.
control is the important part here.
Yeah, taking baby steps can lead you to the every journey of your life.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
exactly. So Vashvik,
Set a
is
goal
there
and
an
continues working on.
yeah? So Vashvik, is there any one inspirational and one funny moment in your journey to this game development, and where are you now today?
I think inspirational and funny, it was just about the times that we were working on Grow Home, because the when we first ported the game from PC to PS4, it was like working at 5 FPS, and it was so funny
Yeah.
to see your character just wobbling around, because like it was a completely physically based animation and like everything was through physics. And if your physics doesn't get enough time to simulate itself, like you are going to see certain problems, and the way
Yeah.
your character would wobbly move, that was
Bas
like so funny.
pro and back.
Yeah, exactly. It was super
Correct.
funny to work on, and then we eventually got it to the phase where it was considered very smooth, and we released it. That so it's like getting to that phase from something that's completely broken to something that's butter
Mhm.
smooth within 3 to 4 months. That was amazing, at least for where we were. So figuring out the problems every day to figure out how we can do micro optimizations to make this better, like that's where the system part also comes, what I was talking about before. We didn't know what we needed to achieve to make the game run faster. What my system was, what my process was, that okay, you every day you just measure performance, figure out the next bottleneck, solve it. Once you solve it, do the same thing again. Profile it,
Okay. Mhm.
measure it, solve it. Profile it, measure it, solve it. It's like it became a system which just kept on happening, repeating, and then eventually we were there where we wanted to be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. So, Vaishvik, like through this our entire conversation, what are a few takeaway notes you want to mention?
I'm assuming that a lot of people who are listening to this or viewing this podcast is it's more about the interest into the game development phase. As I said before as well, if you are interested in this, just start working on it rather than waiting for it to gather more information, because information, we are in an edge where there are so many sources of truth that you don't want to follow everything. So just figure out the thing that you want to start working on and then just go ahead with it.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Vaishvik. Thank you for sharing your
Yes.
knowledge, experience with us and to our audience. So, hope
And
soon we will meet again.
Sure. Thank you for having me.
yes.
Okay.
And thank you for being a part of TTS.
Yeah. Hashtag
All right.
TTS.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.